I placed my resignation letter on the chief medical officer's desk at 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Underneath it, I had clipped a flash drive containing 847 files. By 8:15 a.m., my phone was ringing non-stop. By noon, the hospital's legal team had scheduled an emergency meeting with the state medical board. What exactly had I documented for the past 11 months? Let me start from the beginning. My name is Dr. Claire Martinez. And until recently, I was an attending physician in the emergency department at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I say until recently because as of 2 weeks ago, I no longer work there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 11 months ago, I was convinced I was the problem. Dr. Richard Pemberton, our chief of surgery and the hospital's golden boy for the past 20 years, had a way of making you feel that way. He'd perfected the art of dismissal wrapped in a smile, condescension disguised as mentorship. Dr. Martinez, he'd say, drawing out my name like it was a mild inconvenience to remember it, you're still learning. Trust the process. Not every patient complaint warrants investigation. The first time I heard this was about Mrs. Helen Kowalski, a 62-year-old grandmother who came into my ER at 3 a.m. complaining of severe abdominal pain. Her chart showed she'd been admitted 3 times in the past month under Dr. Pemberton's care for what he'd diagnosed as anxiety-induced gastritis. Each time, she was given Xanax and sent home. Something felt wrong. Her pain was too specific, too localized. I ordered a CT scan despite the previous notes saying imaging was unnecessary and wasteful. The scan showed a perforated bowel. She needed emergency surgery within hours or she would die. When I brought this to Dr. Pemberton during morning rounds, he looked at the scan, then at me, with this practiced expression of patient disappointment. Like I was a child who'd brought him a drawing that wasn't very good. Dr. Martinez, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I've been practicing medicine since before you were born. Mrs. Kowalski is a known anxious patient. These scans are expensive, and they expose patients to unnecessary radiation. We can't order tests just to validate worried residents' instincts. I'm not a resident, I said quietly. I'm an attending. And she has a perforation. He smiled. That smile. Then I suppose we'll schedule an exploratory procedure. But in the future, please consult with senior staff before ordering costly imaging. We have protocols for a reason. Mrs. Kowalski had her surgery. They found exactly what the scan showed. Dr. Pemberton performed the procedure himself and took full credit during the Morbidity and Mortality Conference, framing it as his clinical insight that caught what others missed. I was standing in the back of that conference room, and I remember thinking, is this really how it works? It happened again 2 weeks later. A young woman named Jessica Torres, 28 years old, came in with severe pelvic pain. Dr. Pemberton had seen her earlier that day in his clinic and diagnosed her with dysmenorrhea, recommending ibuprofen and heat packs. She returned to the ER that night, crying, barely able to walk. I examined her, and suspected a ruptured ovarian cyst, possibly a torsion. I called Dr. Pemberton directly. Claire, he said, and the use of my first name felt deliberately patronizing, you're catastrophizing. Young women get period cramps. It's not a surgical emergency every time someone has pelvic pain. Give her stronger pain medication and discharge her. Her blood pressure is dropping, I said. Then monitor her for a few hours. But I'm not taking her to the OR for menstrual cramping. I have a reputation to maintain. I went over his head. I called Dr. Sarah Chen, the OB-GYN on call, and described the symptoms. She arrived within 20 minutes, examined Jessica, and took her straight to surgery. Jessica had a hemorrhaging ectopic pregnancy. Another hour, and she would have bled out. The next morning, Dr. Pemberton pulled me aside in the hallway outside the physician's lounge. His voice was low, friendly even, but his eyes weren't smiling. You undermined me, he said. You called Dr. Chen without my approval. That kind of behavior shows poor judgment and worse teamwork. I've been giving you the benefit of the doubt, Claire, but you're starting to seem like someone who doesn't respect the chain of command. I saved her life, I said. You got lucky, he replied. And luck isn't medicine. I'm going to need you to be more consultative going forward. This isn't about ego, this is about quality of care and efficiency. Understood? I nodded, because what else could I do? He was the chief of surgery. I was an ER attending who'd been at the hospital for 3 years. He had the board's ear, the donor's trust, and 35 years of institutional power. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mrs. Kowalski and Jessica Torres and this phrase that kept repeating in my mind, how many others? I went into the hospital at 2 a.m., used my credentials to access the medical records database, and started searching. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first. Patterns, maybe. Complaints. Readmissions. What I found made my hands shake. Over the past 3 years, Dr. Pemberton had been named in 47 patient complaints. Most were dismissed as personality conflicts or unrealistic patient expectations. But when I cross-referenced his surgical outcomes with state and national averages, the numbers were damning. His complication rates were 40% higher than the national average for similar procedure. His readmission rates were even worse. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. The hospital knew. There were internal quality review flags going back 18 months. Multiple peer physicians had raised concerns. And every single time, the complaints were quietly filed away with notations like insufficient evidence or with unacceptable variance. Dr. Richard Pemberton brought in $4.8 million annually in surgical revenue. He was the hospital's top earner. His name was on a wing of the building. He played golf with the chairman of the board. So the hospital looked the other way. I printed nothing. I saved everything to an encrypted drive. And I started documenting everything I witnessed in real time, with timestamps, patient ID numbers, and detailed clinical notes. This is when things got dangerous. Because Dr. Pemberton wasn't just arrogant. He was smart. And he started to notice that I was paying attention. 3 weeks after I began my documentation, I was called into a meeting with Dr. Pemberton and the hospital's chief medical officer, Dr. Thomas Reeves. They sat across from me in a windowless conference room, and Dr. Reeves slid a folder across the table. "We've received some concerning feedback about your clinical judgment," Dr. Reeves said. His tone was regretful, like he was delivering bad news about a family member. I opened the folder. Inside were incident reports. 5 of them. All alleging that I had overstepped boundaries, ordered unnecessary tests, and demonstrated concerning anxiety about routine cases. Every single report was signed by Dr. Pemberton. "This is retaliatory," I said. My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering. "This is documented concern," Dr. Pemberton corrected. "Claire, I want to help you. I really do. But if you're struggling with the pressure of emergency medicine, maybe this isn't the right specialty for you. There's no shame in recognizing your limitations." He was setting up a paper trail. If I kept pushing, he'd use these reports to question my competence, maybe even my medical license. So I smiled. I apologized. I thanked them for their concern and promised to be more mindful of resource utilization. And then I went home and planned my next move. My best friend from medical school, Rachel Kim, was now a healthcare attorney specializing in medical malpractice and whistleblower cases. I called her that night. "How strong does your documentation need to be?" I asked. "Ironclad," she said. "If you're going up against a hospital and a surgeon with that kind of institutional backing, you need contemporaneous records, multiple corroborating sources, and a clear pattern of harm. 1 or 2 cases won't cut it. You need a systemic problem that's impossible to ignore." "What if I have that?" There was a pause. "Then you need to be very, very careful. Because if they catch you building a case, they'll destroy you first." So I became invisible. I stopped questioning Dr. Pemberton's decisions openly. I smiled in meetings. I even brought donuts to morning rounds once, playing the role of the chastened junior colleague who'd learned her lesson. But every night, I added to my documentation. Patient outcomes. Surgical complication reports. Billing records that I quietly accessed through the hospital's financial database, using legitimate clinical review protocols. Email chains where quality concerns were dismissed. Meeting minutes where red flags were rationalized away. I also started reaching out to former patients. Carefully. Ethically. I couldn't approach them as their doctor, but I could find them through public records and contact them as a concerned physician requesting feedback for a quality improvement study. Mrs. Kowalski told me she complained 3 times about Dr. Pemberton before her perforation. Nobody followed up. Jessica Torres said she'd nearly died because she was too embarrassed to question a doctor who told her she was overreacting. A man named Marcus Williams told me his father died after a routine hernia surgery because Dr. Pemberton had missed a post-operative infection. The hospital settled out of court with an NDA attached. By month 8 of my documentation, I had a database of 63 cases spanning 5 years where Dr. Pemberton's patients had experienced preventable harm. I had billing records showing he'd systematically upcoded procedures to maximize revenue. I had emails proving the hospital's quality department had buried reports to protect their star surgeon. But I needed one more thing: real-time evidence. So I volunteered to assist on Dr. Pemberton's surgical cases. Learning opportunity, I called it. He was so convinced I'd been properly cowed that he said yes. That's when I saw what happened in the ER when nobody was watching closely. Dr. Pemberton was brilliant once. I could see glimpses of it. But somewhere along the way, ego and complacency had replaced precision. He rushed through procedures. He dismissed nurses' concerns. He made judgment calls that prioritized speed over safety. And when complications arose, he blamed everyone else: the anesthesiologist, the OR staff, the patient's non-compliance. I saw him botch a routine gallbladder removal because he was texting during a critical portion of the procedure. The patient developed a bile duct injury that required 2 additional surgeries to repair. I saw him close a surgical site without properly checking for bleeding because he was late for a donor luncheon. The patient hemorrhaged post-op and nearly died. I documented it all. Operative reports. Time stamps. Witness statements from nurses who were too scared to file official complaints. And then, on a cold morning in February, Dr. Pemberton made his final mistake. A 16-year-old named Mia Thompson came into the ER with appendicitis. It was a straightforward case. She needed an appendectomy within a few hours. Dr. Pemberton was the surgeon on call. I watched him examine her for maybe 90 seconds before declaring it probable constipation and ordering a laxative. "She needs surgery," I said. "She needs to eat more fiber," he replied, not looking up from his tablet where he was checking his stock portfolio. I stood there in that room with Mia crying quietly on the exam table and her mother holding her hand, and I made a decision. "I'm ordering a CT scan," I said. "No," Dr. Pemberton said. "You're not." "Then I'm calling the pediatric surgery attending. Dr. Marcus Lewis. He can make the call." Dr. Pemberton's face went very still. "If you go over my head again, Claire, I will see to it that you never work in this city again. Your medical career will be over. Do you understand me?" I understood perfectly. I called Dr. Lewis anyway. Mia had her appendectomy 2 hours later. Her appendix ruptured during the surgery. If we'd waited even another hour, she would have developed sepsis. Dr. Lewis pulled me aside afterward. "How did Pemberton miss that?" he asked. "He didn't miss it," I said. "He just didn't look." The next morning, I was placed on immediate administrative leave pending an investigation into unprofessional conduct and insubordination. The hospital moved fast. Too fast. Within 72 hours, they prepared a termination package with a severance agreement that included a comprehensive non-disparagement clause and an NDA. They wanted me gone and silent. That's when I placed my resignation letter on the CMO's desk with the flash drive underneath. The letter was brief. "I hereby resign my position effective immediately. Please find attached documentation that I believe warrants immediate review by the State Medical Board, the Joint Commission, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services." The flash drive contained everything. 5 years of systematically buried malpractice. Financial fraud. Intimidation of staff. Patient harm. And names. 63 patients who'd been harmed. 47 who'd filed complaints that were ignored. 12 who'd died from preventable complications. The hospital's legal team tried to stop me. They called me into that windowless conference room again and offered me money. A lot of money. $500,000 to walk away and sign their NDA. "You don't want to make an enemy of this institution," Dr. Reeves said. "We have resources. We have connections. If you try to fight us, we will bury you." I looked at him across that conference table and thought about Mrs. Kowalski and Jessica Torres and Mia Thompson. I thought about the 12 people who died because the hospital valued revenue over human lives. "I already submitted the complaint," I said. "This morning. At 7:47 a.m. "You're about 6 hours too late." The color drained from Dr. Reeves' face. The state medical board launched an investigation within 48 hours. The Joint Commission showed up for a surprise inspection the following week. CMS threatened to pull the hospital's Medicare funding. Dr. Richard Pemberton's medical license was suspended pending review. The hospital's board of directors forced 3 executives to resign, including Dr. Reeves. And the lawsuit started. 63 cases. Some civil, some criminal. The hospital's malpractice insurance carrier settled 38 of them within 6 months for a combined $47 million. The hospital itself faced federal charges for healthcare fraud related to the systematic upcoding I'd documented. They ended up paying a $23 million fine and submitting to 5 years of federal oversight. As for me, I was unemployable in Chicago for about 4 months. Dr. Pemberton's allies made sure of that. I was blacklisted from 3 hospital systems. My name became synonymous with troublemaker in medical circles. But here's what they didn't expect. Patients remembered. Mrs. Kowalski called me 2 weeks after the story broke. "You saved my life," she said. "And you risked everything to make sure it didn't happen to anyone else. How can I help?" She started a patient advocacy group. Within a month, 15 of the other victims had joined. They lobbied the state legislature, demanding stronger whistleblower protections for healthcare workers and mandatory public reporting of surgeon outcome data. They called it Claire's Law. It passed 9 months later. Rachel, my attorney friend, helped me file a whistleblower lawsuit under the False Claims Act. When you report Medicare fraud and the government recovers money, you're entitled to a percentage. The hospital's $23 million fine meant I received $3.8 million. I used that money to start something I'd been dreaming about since my 3rd year of medical school. A free clinic for underserved communities on Chicago's South Side. We opened last month. The clinic is called Second Opinion Health Center, and our mission is simple. We believe patients. We take time. We investigate complaints. We put safety over revenue. I hired 12 doctors, most of them women and minorities who'd been pushed out of other institutions for not fitting the culture. I hired nurses who'd been fired for speaking up about unsafe conditions. I hired the quality officer who'd tried to flag Dr. Pemberton's complications and was forced into early retirement. We see 200 patients a week now. We don't take insurance, so we can't be pressured by reimbursement metrics. We operate on grants, donations, and sliding scale fees. Some patients pay $200 for a visit. Some pay nothing. We treat them exactly the same. Mrs. Kowalski volunteers at our front desk twice a week. She brings homemade cookies and tells every nervous patient, "This doctor listens. I promise." Jessica Torres is in nursing school now. She wants to work in our ER when we expand next year. Mia Thompson sends me a card every year on the anniversary of her surgery. This year's card said, "Thank you for not being afraid." The truth is, I was terrified. Every single day. But I learned something important during those 11 months of documentation and those 4 months of professional exile. Fear isn't the absence of courage. It's the price of courage. And sometimes, the cost of staying silent is higher than the cost of speaking up. Last week, I received a letter from the state medical board. Dr. Richard Pemberton's license was permanently revoked. He'll never practice medicine again. The letter included a note from one of the board members, "Thank you for your service to patient safety. Your documentation was the most thorough case we've ever reviewed. You should be proud." I am proud. But not for the reasons they think. I'm proud of Mrs. Kowalski for speaking up even when she was told she was anxious. I'm proud of Jessica for coming back to the ER even though she'd been dismissed. I'm proud of every patient who trusted their instincts when a doctor told them they were wrong. And I'm proud of the 12 doctors at my clinic who chose principle over prestige, safety over salary, truth over institutional power. We're building something different here. Something that puts patients first, not revenue. Something that values the young doctor who asks questions over the senior surgeon who demands silence. My mother called me last night. She'd seen an article about the clinic in the Tribune. "Are you happy?" she asked. I looked around my office. It's small, about a quarter the size of my old office at Northwestern Memorial. The furniture is secondhand. The equipment is donated. We have 2 exam rooms and a dream of someday having 10. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I told her. Because here's what I learned. Power isn't about having the biggest office, or the most prestigious title, or the protection of institutional weight. Power is having the courage to place your resignation letter on someone's desk with the truth attached, knowing that everything you've built might crumble, and doing it anyway because silence has a body count. Dr. Richard Pemberton thought I couldn't survive without the hospital's approval. He thought I'd be too afraid of losing everything to speak up. He was wrong. I didn't just survive. I built something better. And every time a patient walks into Second Opinion Health Center and says, "I don't think my other doctor listened to me," I get to say the 4 words that changed my life. Tell me your story. That's not revenge. That's evolution.